Welcome back to the channel, everyone. We're out at the little greenhouse and we were doing some compost sifting, and I wanted to kind of share and give a little demonstration on this today. All right, so let's get right into this. We've got our newly built compost sifter here, and this is some nice galvanized hardware cloth, very sturdy and durable, and we used some 2-inch boards, and we had tacked down the bottom, basically sealing all of that galvanized mesh in so we don't have anything on the outside poking anybody. And we gave it enough width that we could basically just set it right up on our wheelbarrow and have enough room. I gave myself some cheesy wooden handles there. I usually use some recycled handles, kind of like on this little one. This is a mini version, and this was just an old school one I had built about 5-6 years ago. I've been using it ever since, and it fits right perfectly on my handles in my wheelbarrow, so I can basically just shovel this all out. So I've got this right here to catch all of that compost that I'm pulling out of the wheelbarrow, or vice versa. There's many uses for this, and kind of versatile on how I build them. One to fit the handle, one to fit the top, and they are a different grade also. These are about 1/4-inch squares here, and these are about 1/2-inch squares, so these sift out a little bit less than those ones do. We use the 1/4-inch mesh for fine sifting, obviously, and then we have our larger mesh for a little bit bigger sifting. And I wanted to share an easy DIY for everybody. We've got this old chicken door here. It's still got a latch on it and everything. You can basically just prop this up or hook this up in some way so it basically just holds it like a tripod, and then you can throw your compost right into it. So you can kind of give it a little angle, and then you can throw your compost right onto the board, and then all your finished compost can either go in a container, like we use a little square container to catch it sometimes, or we will just sift it right onto a location and then just kind of take the rake and pull the compost off and let the water from the rain kind of just wash it in. So that's as simple as it gets. I was out here building this new sieve today, or this sifter, and we've got a little bit invested into it. I am going to start marketing these. I've got to figure out how much this actually cost me to build, but I really wanted to talk about the actual compost sifting process, because we are using this compost sieve to sift our actual compost and to sift soil that we had purchased, to kind of get all of those large pieces and the pieces of wood, because we will use this soil that we catch in the bottom for starting and germinating plants for our greenhouse this fall. We got all of our compost here, and we just kind of spread that all out. This is kind of a small version of it. I've got a entire bucket of compost back here I've got to get through this whole sieve here. So once we've got all these larger pieces here, this is what is not going to make it through. I want to show our actual sifted compost and soil mixture here. Now that is super fine and it's super fluffy. The compost is kind of heavy if you try and sprout seed in it on its own. As long as it's finished compost, it will work because it's not super high in nitrogen. But if you try and just use compost, it can and will kind of mold on you and just become stagnant because it is so heavy. That's why we stretch our compost and stretch our soil at the same time, by mixing all of them together and kind of sifting them through. And like I said, we have a whole process for sifting the small stuff, sifting the larger stuff right out of the fresh compost pile. A lot of times we don't even sift our compost. We will put a lot of compost right on top as a top dressing for most of our plants, and we really don't have to worry about it. As long as the compost is finished, you don't have to worry about the nitrogen content, and it should benefit your plants as a top dressing, as the water slowly releases top nutrients from the rain, and it will slowly trickle down, as opposed to watering it in right away. We like to just throw our top dressing on and let Mother Nature do it, and it seems to benefit our plant. But one main reason we actually use a sieve, like I said, is to get those pieces of wood out of there. We have a lot of nitrogen sapping pieces of wood, so instead of having high nitrogen from having all your compost mixed in, you're going to have a lack of nitrogen because those wood chips are going to be combining with it and composting, thus drawing the nitrogen out of the soil that is in your cell or in your individual pot that you're trying to start your new plant in. We have tons of wood chips that come up in our chicken run, because we had filled our chicken run with wood chips, a huge pile, and let them break it all apart, and they're basically broken down now, but we still have some good chunks of wood chips every once in a while. So when we're going through, we have stalks of tomatoes, stalks of pumpkins, all types of stuff that comes out in our sifters and in our sieves that we can kind of throw back in and let the process begin again and kind of break all that material down even further. So I want to sift all this up real quick, and I'll bring everybody along for that, and I want to show the final product of the mixed compost 50 to 50 with the soil that we had purchased. So I mashed this all around with my hands and kind of pushed everything through that would fit, and then I just picked it up and shook it, and everything else had fallen through. And I want to show everybody the consistency of all of this here. Everything is basically just a little pebble. Some of it is soil that can be broken up further. That is why I always check it all out. But most of this stuff is just bits of compost and stuff that is not going to fit through, wood chips and organic material that is just going to re-break down in our chicken compost run out there. Let's just slide this forward and see what we got down here. Now this is just pure powder. That is awesome. This is our #1 go-to for when we are sifting out and planting lots of new plants, or doing transplanting even on smaller varieties and smaller pots. This is how we fill all of our pots, because we could fill this wheelbarrow up pretty simply with this large sifter here. We can start thousands of plants into individual pots and into flats and have tons of great nutrients, and we can let them stay in those pots a little bit longer and develop better roots, because they have the amount of nutrients it will require to keep them alive through the entire time that they stay in those little cells. Now, if anybody's got any questions, as always, drop in the comments below. I would gladly share the dimensions of this box. It did not take me a whole lot to build it. It was pretty simple and straightforward, and it is sturdy, and it should last me 5+ years.